the Around the NFL podcast is going around the NFC in 48 minutes.
Yeah, we are. Should just have Jason do the whole show. Summer episode.
I love that. Yeah,
From the Chris Wessling Podcast Studio, it's Around the NFL. I am Dan Hanzus. Got heroes here. Gregg Rosenthal. Marc Sessler. Wearing that black button up. Yum, yum, yum. And joining us, a very special guest. We love her. She's been on the show, but never in person. Jourdan Rodrigue of The Athletic. What's up?
You guys are all taller in person.
All of us?
I know you're lying.
To a man, all of you.
Jourdan, what is happening? This is very fun, and Jourdan, we're going to get to a little bit later, who covers the Rams and the NFL and kills it over on The Athletic. You come up a lot on the show, which is a credit to your work. You just came out with Finding Rams, which was a deep dive, 2-part breakdown on their entire draft process, which is awesome. And now we're going to talk about not just the Rams, but all of the NFC. Are you prepared for this?
I'm very nervous because this is literally life or death because of the dart situation. So I am prepared to be punctured by a dart.
Well, also just that Dan is a very exacting judge on guests, and unfortunately, as a fan of the show, you do know that
we
this
do
is an
have
important spot.
And it's not a democracy.
Standards.
It really boils down to how Dan feels.
Do I like you? Do you bring value to the show? We have it, the famous, that no one's ever seen it. Like we're going to talk about the Rams database. We have our hit it and quit it list. And, could Jourdan end up on it? We don't know.
Well, she's already been on the show at least like 4 times.
In person.
Okay.
In person.
That can change. Yeah,
so the pressure is off the charts right now.
It's an incredible pressure. I am glad you did brief me about this when I last saw you over at the orphanage. So thank you.
And it was great to see you.
Yeah.
It was great to see you.
What an amazing guy, right? The work in the community.
Well,
the first thing Jourdan
Dabo
did,
Sweeney knows that
Dan
as
wouldn't
well.
mention it himself, so it's important that you bring it up.
I did. I ran into Dabo Sweeney at the Senior Bowl in Mobile. And
What did
he
Dabo say?
said, hey, I heard you know Dan Hanzus, that guy.
Yes.
What?
He would know. He personalized the football that Jourdan saw. So it is great. Whenever I run into people at the orphanage that I'm building, it's always great. And Gregg, join us at the orphanage. Instead of getting mad about me getting these footballs for my work, join me.
Oh no,
Let's lift the thing where you lift the wooden frame of the home,
Right.
and everybody's got to work together.
Yes.
There's always one spot that's empty. That's the Gregg spot.
I don't love.
It's like when you leave a plate out for Jesus or a dead person.
Or
in
the
family.
kid that's at the recital and there's the seat saved for dad, and they look and you see like the light go out behind the ice. That's us with the orphanage building and Gregg.
Greg, it was in that empty spot at the orphanage that I carried you.
Oh,
There you go.
One set of footprints.
There you go.
I don't
That's a
love that.
listener
Like
right there.
the second thing Jourdan did after taking a beat and seeing the great picture of Chris Wessling, the Chris Wessling podcast studio.
course.
After taking a beat, the second thing Jourdan did here was take a picture of your football. But I do like you bringing it up because now that we know it actually was meant for Marc, that Marc did the moderate amount of help for the Clemson, capitalists of America Society or whatever, and it just was a mistake, and that they actually don't know the difference between the two of you. It actually puts you in.
I feel like
bad
anytime
light.
that realization, that truth, that narrative bubbles up, it's probably scrubbed from the show. I don't re-listen to the show.
It's a great ending to this whole
I've never
mystery.
heard this.
Ending.
and
Yeah, so
I've
it's-
listened to every episode.
It
and
just
I've
came
never-
up.
Oh, it
came
was
up
edited
recently.
out then.
I don't know. It's a baseless theory, and
It's not baseless.
He
I
literally
I
met the
spent time
kids. He's the one who
Clemson
met the
students
little children.
in our newsroom. But the way that we have our glass cubes, one of their PR people probably that's probably Dan Hanzus because it's our names, but it looks like I sit at
this
Dan's
says so
desk
much
from a-
more about you, Marc, than
No, it doesn't.
anyone. And Greg, less is said,
I
the
have never
better
thought
about you
this.
continually.
I've
bringing
never
this
thought
up.
about this a second time. First of all,
I'm
It's
sure you
delicious.
haven't.
It's a delicious answer to this mystery.
The best part is
I wouldn't have even said a word about it.
if that was true, which is an absurd theory that you have.
It
but
is a
very on
solid
brand.
theory.
the idea
100%.
that as soon as the football showed up, Marc's brain started another. Oh, I've been overlooked once more. That the gears turning.
Well, it's
It's a-
clearly
it's a delicious
much
moment.
more under your skin.
It's
But,
a delicious.
I would say
hang on.
this, like
Got to spill. Hang on.
I'm so happy right now.
I just simply did
yeah,
spend
Jordan's
time
here
with
too,
Clemson
yeah.
students. So
You know,
We have
you
a
two
guest.
That could just be a
are
coincidence.
unbelievably annoying to hang out with most of the time.
Can I get a quick something to wipe down my laptop? That would be excellent. All right, so we have a lot of work to do, and we're going around the NFC in exactly 48 minutes. And I think it's very important, Jourdan. You are aware of the Dart situation. We have Big Funk behind the glass today, filling in for ETP, and that is. That's important to know because ETP is reckless with the dart, but Big Funk has always wanted an opportunity. Thank you. Big Funk has always wanted the opportunity to shoot people with a dart in the studio. So just don't go over the 3 minutes.
He's more of an Oswald type, so you know, high chaos potential.
All right, let's get into it. We've divvied up the teams, and we're going to go through it, and we're going to start with the NFC East. And why don't we start with the Dallas Cowboys? Why don't I get it going with the Dallas Cowboys? Okay, I hope my laptop is okay.
Way to play
Problematic, I know. Here we go. Hang on, we're going to get the laptop wiped down a little bit more. All right, here we go. All right, the way the running back situation has played out has been, a minor fiasco on some level. I mean, they just re-signed Zeke Elliott. But I think it's important to also point out the sky is not falling in Dallas. You know, you still have Dak Prescott. You still have CeeDee Lamb. I assume CeeDee Lamb's going to be in the building when it matters. You have questions, sure. Like, is Jalen Tolbert going to be able to fill that number 3 wide receiver spot? The offensive line, we know Zach Martin is probably going to be the right guard, but where does everyone else fall in this mix? The defense has some issues, but it's not overwhelming concerns. Brendan Aubrey's on this team, best damn kicker in the league outside of Justin Tucker. We could sit here and say the same things about Dallas eventually falling on their face in January, but I just want to say, like, I expect them to be playing in mid-January once again, based on where this roster stands. What do you think, Jourdan?
I'm really curious. I mean, they were a really strong team last year, obviously, but then sputtered out at the end. And I'm really curious about the structures of the contracts. I know, Greg, you're in the weeds on some of those things as well. It seems like 1 year left for a lot of different people, including some of the 5th-year option stuff that they've picked up. This is not reporting. This is not source. But I do wonder if they're trying to play the string out a little bit, including aligned with the head coach the last year on his contract, see what happens. If they're in a good shape before the trade deadline, take a really big swing to try to push, or understand that that's about that time that you start saying your goodbyes.
Which is like not the way I would run things. The sky isn't falling now, but it wouldn't surprise me if it is falling around the trade deadline time. Like, I've just been looking at this organization for a long time, wondering, because they used to never be able to handle success, and they have handled it under Mike McCarthy. They've been consistent, but this time there's just a lot of things pulling, especially when it's pulling at your quarterback. And then I do think there's questions. Like, can Mike Zimmer fix what was a collapsing defense at the end of the year? Their linebacker play is what really killed them, and they don't seem any better at linebacker right now.
They just feel to me a little bit more directionless than in years past, and now all that's amped up because it's the Cowboys. But if you look at their draft, like in their top 3 picks, you got to tackle a guard. I kind of like what they did on that side of the ball because that was necessary. And not everything can be some sort of fantasy-based home run in the draft. But for me, it starts just with like, you have a quarterback what are you doing with the contract there? I mean, I really agree with
Got his buddy Zeke
saying.
back. That's gonna make him happy.
But that's such a Jerry Jones thing from old. I don't like. It feels like a play that hits kind of Jerry Jones move. But I'm with Jourdan. Like, this feels like there's a 1 year window here to find out how much things could change.
If they don't sign an extension, Dak will play the final year of his contract and counts close to $60 million against the cap. So, a lot of stuff going on there. Marc Sessler, who's even?
All right. Some say the ancient pyramids of Egypt were actually ornately constructed energy centers offering a brand of cosmic power. People are not saying this about the New York Giants. Since selecting Daniel Jones in 2019, the G-men rank 31st in points per game, total yards per game, and passing yards per game. That is why I love the Malik Neighbors pick. I think it's a total change agent. No Giants players had 800-plus yards receiving in over half a decade. I think Theo Johnson is an interesting tight end prospect, too. Tyler Nubin was PFS top safety prospect. The pressure is real, though. The Rams and Seahawks went through what I'd call mini rebuilds in the course of a season. They're back on their toes. We're entering year 3 of Brian Daboll. There's chatter that Drew Lock could see tangible snaps. The owner has visions of sugar plums and Bill Belichick dancing in his head. The Giants were a white-hot regression candidate a year ago, but Malik Neighbors, Brian Burns, a healthy offensive line, a healthy Danny Dimes, are the G-men actually an inflation candidate 1 year later, if that's even a thing? Weird team, weird days.
Malik Neighbors is the type of player, 21 in his first training camp, by the way, 21 years old. He's the type of player that makes you look less wrong about whatever quarterback.
And look, I like their idea that they were going to try to trade up for Drake May, but otherwise take the best player on the board, which is Malik Neighbors. I thought it was
Joe Alt if he was there.
Right. I thought it was interesting. Our frenemy, Daniel Jeremiah, mentioned on his something, I guess he has a program, Move the Sticks.
I think it's a radio show.
He kind of gave the game away that he says Drew Lock, he thinks, has a good chance of winning the job, and that the Giants were literally comparing Drew Lock and Daniel Jones, but emphasis on Drew Lock to the quarterbacks that were going to come out. And essentially, reading between the lines, saying, like, Drew Lock's just as good as J.J. McCarthy, so why take a quarterback? And it's something to think about. Daboll got Coach of the Year because of, like, a run-first offense with a quarterback that now has a neck injury, has had a neck injury, and has injury guarantees in 2025. So it'd be very risky to play Daniel Jones a lot.
And yet, I think they will. I think I think he's going to play. I think they're going to give him a shot. I think unless they've totally soured on him based on 6 games, 7 games, and an injury, I think he's going to get a chance to play this year and rectify and make them look smart after he's made them look so dumb the last year. I guess we'll have to say.
Does it matter that the owner seems to like him? Because that's
of course it
the
does.
quarterback position with
How
the
could it
Giants in
not?
the past. A lot.
And Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau.
Yeah.
That's
I like
pretty
that.
fun.
Dexter Lawrence, I mean, that's an
There's some
awesome
juice.
front
Another friend
line.
of the
I
show.
think getting Wink Martindale out of there is probably like a positive. We don't really know what we're getting out of Shane Bowen, who's their coordinator. I'm predictable, apparently, because Jourdan says she made 10 pages of notes for this
I'm
show. which worries me.
nervous.
And one of them was Greg's going to bring up Drew Lock. And I was
It
predictable.
is. I
You're
have
right.
it here in parentheses. Yeah. Greg may bring up DJ's comment about Drew Lock.
Be ready.
To me, that's like he had this info the whole time, and then he waits till after the draft because safe.
A classic Sessler rub-build was in there. Always trips me.
Well, I think you can compare these teams.
I was dizzy for about a minute and a half after he hit me with rub-build. All right, up next, Jourdan on the Eagles.
First, I have no additional Howie Roseman take. The range was pretty much already covered on this show. Big fan of the show. Have listened to every minute of this show. I do love specifically pairing Cooper DeJean with Vic Fangio. And in fact, wonder if Fangio has an idea to make him the star, which is a larger framed hybrid safety and corner who in this defense does not have to abide by the coverage of the rest of the group. The idea is to make him an unavoidable player, especially pairing him with Quinyon Mitchell. It's an off-man zone scheme that can get real matchy. And Quinyon Mitchell's ability on the outside can open up more movement for Cooper DeJean and more like dictating the throw to where they need it. They needed to amp up their secondary. I think schematically this could get really funky and cool. I love the legacy pick, Jeremiah Trotter. Great point, Mark. And I think they're underrated pick for 2025 or maybe 2026 as the edge Jalix Hunt. Also, I met Big Dom at a league function.
What's he like?
Could not have been kinder.
Okay.
Really nice man.
Does it seem like he's secretly the head coach and the centering force of their sideline?
We didn't really interact that long, but, I'll dig deeper next time.
That's a great idea about DeJean. I mean, Fangio's a perfect guy to use him. And then pairing him with C.J. Gardner-Johnson, who's been successful there and is so versatile. Like, they have a lot of options. I wonder if James Bradbury even makes this team. They're suddenly deep in the secondary after that being a weakness.
I kind of love when teams do that, and I think that's one of the reasons someone like Roseman's getting the praise because they rebuilt that entire secondary. Darius Slay, Bradbury too, coming off like big names, but not coming off good seasons. Only one team in the league allowed more passing yardage per game than the Eagles. So I think the Quinyon Mitchell thing was fortuitous to have him land in their lap. And Cooper DeJean, like I had him going in the first round, so to get him at 40, it's like good timing with good picks. That's why they're getting the praise they're getting.
I love that for the Eagles.
Yeah.
I wonder if they're just as good on defense, though, as like Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter get better. That's a position that takes a little while to get better. Jordan Davis, maybe didn't make the step they hoped last year.
Well, it'll open up what you can do in the secondary in the back half. This when it's functioning at its at its truest form, like this defense is all about tendencies. I think the combination of the quarters they brought in are tendency breaking or tendency forcing or dictating to the offense players. And when you have movement like that up front or the potential of that, I think that could be really cool.
It was good to have, because we're going to have Jourdan also handle the Falcons later. These are hot button topics on the show.
No opinion.
So as a guiding force of the group on the show, I think that's a smart move. In fact, it could be Jourdan in the role of peacemaker, and I think that's very important.
Or you settle the ties. You decide who's right, who's wrong forevermore.
We'll see. We'll see.
The great Howie Roseman debate of 2024.
Man, Big Funk. Come on, Big Funk. That peacemaker eagle's got to be ready.
I know. I tried finding it. I thought I had it, and then I'm like, suddenly it's just gone. So, yeah.
Timeout.
Ooh.
All right, so listen, this Howie thing has turned into a national talking point. Interesting. Some of the takes a little bit similar to the ones you heard
I
on
thought
Saturday
so.
on the show.
I think you had a point there.
But that's beside the point. I wanted to say this is not me looking to do some gotcha journalism. Jourdan nailed it. This is let's just take a look by the numbers. So I hit up NFL Media Research. I came up with this. Howie do that. A closer look at the draft prom king. Since Howie Roseman regained personnel authority following Chip Kelly's firing in 2016, he's had 8 draft classes. Total player selections, 57. First team All-Pros, 0. Pro Bowl players, 5. Players who started Super Bowl 52 or 57, 12. Draft picks who signed second contract with the Eagles, an underrated kind of stat when you look at this draft stuff. 11 out of 45 eligible for guys drafted as late as 2021. What does that tell you? I guess you need to see other teams. It seems pretty normal. It seems, I would guess, probably in line with an average type of GM's track record.
I think the second contracts would be higher, but you're right. We kind of need to.
I'd want
That's a
to,
ton of
I'd want to
second
like
contracts.
line up everyone else. But those numbers are surprising compared to the amount of gushing and praise he seems to get from.
I mean,
all
in 8
corners.
drafts, nobody's been
So this
all-pro.
doesn't include when he was put out in the shed behind the
After the shed. Once he won the shed, he was taken out of the Poconos and returned to Philadelphia.
I'd also say that a lot of the Howie praise has bubbled up in like the last couple years. It wasn't the minute he came out of the shed that people
also-
were back on. He had to rebuild things.
It's a high bar first team All Pros. Like Jalen Hurts was a pick that people really were negative about.
That's a hit.
Why would you do that? I mean, he's an All Pro, so that's one. I mean, I guess they're not counting second teams, but they've had multiple. I can think of second team too, and they had a Defensive Rookie of the Year. The 11 contracts, I think, is big. It is a reminder, though, to me. If you were picking what's Howie done best, it's probably been the trades and free agency. If I had to rank like how he's acquired players the best, it's and most creatively has been trades.
If the media was really so high on Howie Roseman's players, wouldn't they be voting for more?
Ooh.
Just asking.
There you go.
Well, it is. I feel like it's this time of year where the love affair peaks.
Right.
And then people get to normal business, and it's become a very safe trope to praise Howie.
They don't
We
allow
need
us
to-
into the
yeah.
Pro Football Writers Association of America and beyond.
We actually had the chief of that association
I mean, AJ,
on
So
the
we
show.
can't vote, but yeah,
Yeah,
We need more writing. For
Like-
Mark.
right.
that would help.
Big
I'm
fan.
good. I'm good.
Big fan.
I'm good with my current status.
Like AJ Brown is an All Pro, but that's acquired through trade. Jalen Hurts.
Right.
I
Yeah,
guess
it's just
Dallas
different ways of
Goddard.
building.
Yeah, Dallas Goddard's never made.
And the point there is not that Howie has not done a good job. He's done a very good job by all accounts. It's just perspective.
I
that's all.
love this draft, though. I mean, they really spammed a need with good players, versatile players that matched what the coach probably wants, what the scheme is, and that consistency is kind of what I'm looking at here with him. Is sometimes there's some high value picks, and sometimes there's some wins. But if you look at the meat and potatoes of the drafts that he's doing, it's like you can understand why he made every pick.
Sure.
And I
Right.
think that's part of it. It makes sense. It makes sense whether you really know a lot about football or whether you don't. you see, okay, this was a need, but also these are the top players on their board, and they fit the scheme.
Logical.
How he handled last season was a huge negative, though. Like, you got Jalen Carter, but the way they attacked that secondary and gave all that money to Bradbury, that was a terrible contract. And they've been on the forefront of, like, linebackers don't matter until last year when, like, they were 30th in the league in DVOA, and I think their linebacker position was the number one reason.
But Greg,
why.
that was all after Big Dom was sent
That's
into
true.
abstention.
That's a
Now
good
he's
point.
back. He was in their
Right.
draft room on draft day, so it's like, you know, they're back in the
That's
He
true.
should really
He's
flip
back.
roles
just become
with
the
the head coach. Sirianni
He
can
is
be.
the like assistant. He's not assistant.
I think he
GM,
has
but
a
sort of like-
VP
yeah, like
title.
he's-
So, like, that's pretty high.
Yeah, that's true.
I just want to really quick. It reminds me a lot, kind of when the league catches you off guard. The linebacker point that you made, Greg. That happens to teams who play that long into the postseason. I mean, we saw it in 2022. They were caught by everything. You couldn't see it through all the injuries, but their offense had gotten stale. They lost an offensive coordinator. The players were injured like all spring.
Mm-hmm.
You couldn't see it because of what happened right out of the gate with the injury catastrophe along their offensive line, but they weren't running, new stuff. They were still very one-dimensional. Their run game wasn't what it is now. They got caught by the league changing, and they didn't have the time to regain their own pace because they were operating, the longest season in NFL history at that time. The Eagles, did the same thing. It also makes what the Chiefs do every year that much more impressive.
But you don't hear Brett Veach getting any love at this level.
I know when those numbers, those Howie-based numbers, were generated for you. I know you had a little grin on your face.
No, the numbers don't look bad for him. It just
They're not-
kind of bears out that
they're
well,
a
we already
little-
knew
they're a
that he
little
doesn't.
surprising.
They're all not home runs in reality, but they look awesome in April. All right, let's move to the final team in the NFC East, the Washington Commanders with Gray.
Going into his week 1 start, I assume Jaden Daniels is the starter. His left tackle will be either Cornelius Lucas or Brandon Coleman, a third-round pick who was probably a guard. And then his right tackle is Andrew Wiley. Overall, this looks like a bottom 5 offensive line. Is this offensive line and Cliff Kingsbury putting Jaden Daniels in a situation to succeed? Because I look at it and I saw a lot of the Patriots, that's the worst situation. A bottom 5 offensive line, Cliff Kingsbury, and a skill position group that's Terry McLaurin, and just a lot of questions, is Jaden Daniels set up well?
Well, there's not a lot of proof that the offensive line is a big positive. And Cliff Kingsbury, for me, is the biggest question mark of new coordinator position in the entire league. Matched with when he had Kyler, it was like there's a very specific scheme here. The quarterback matches it, and it's not that Daniels doesn't, but is Kingsbury rolling that back out? Has he changed? Has he gone through any sort of personal growth, and now he's going to attack teams? Because what he did
Does he
in
have
Arizona,
the players? I mean, I
Yeah.
don't know if he has the
It's
players.
not a great
Even if-
situation, but that's why bad teams get these quarterbacks often.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I mean, it's a great point on the offensive line. Bang, I guess is what
Yeah,
I say here.
here we
yeah.
go.
And so I'm so nervous. I'm sorry.
Don't be
not
nervous.
showing.
But
You're
but
doing
I
great.
do think you make a great point. Everybody talks about how slight of frame Jaden Daniels is. And you grow into that obviously. And, the medical assessments that teams do prior to the draft tells you how much more mass a person can put on their frame. And so they will have some sort of guideline for that. They'll know, but you also have to protect him. And I think that's key and critical. Obviously, you don't want a guy coming in and he gets beat to hell and he's scared, he's kind of seeing ghosts a little bit like that.
Every year, and you saw it with the first pick last year, there's guys that, and basically every Jets quarterback that's come into the league in my lifetime, that seems to get stuck with that type of team. It happens every year. You hope it's not going to be Jaden Daniels this year, but maybe this is a dawn of a new era in Washington. While it's not going to be built overnight, they'll protect him enough. Like the Austin Eckler move, for instance. I think the general consensus around Eckler now is he lost 2-3 steps near the end with the Chargers, but he also is a potential really good weapon for a young quarterback, a guy that has a nose for the end zone, that could catch the ball out of the backfield. You have Brian Robinson with him, so maybe their running game can help stabilize things while Daniels gets his feet wet, but you got to protect him.
That's what the Sam Howell thing threw me as a not great move because you're like a snap away from Marcus Mariota being your starter.
It's just a lot to ask him. He's explosive. Are any players other than McLaurin around him explosive?
Hold on. Take a break. And when we return, the NFC North. All right, welcome back. Around the NFC in 48 minutes. You are a fan of the show, Jourdan. You're doing great.
I just mouthed to Greg. Do I do this?
I would like you to, so let's run
Wow.
it back.
I think I can actually.
I
we go.
understand the
I think I
anxiety
can.
around this.
Here
I
we go.
practiced this in
particular
my car.
exercise.
You've already
Don't
beaten my
build more
performance.
anxiety, Mark. Let her flow.
Nobody
Here we
look.
go.
Nobody look at me. All right. Welcome back.
That's
Well
great.
done.
That was excellent. That might be the best one. There you go. Big Funk. We just went through the entire first quarter of this exercise. The dart didn't come out once. I don't know if you're feeling any sense of tension.
Well, we were good
Yeah.
men and women
You
here.
guys are pros. There was a moment.
Wait,
during
can
the-
I please have the Big Funk theme?
Oh.
Please, before we go any
Okay.
further. I said the Big Funk. Be ready for the Big Funk theme when it's Big Funk time.
You spilled water on your laptop.
Shh. That never happened. Big Funk. Feeling in. ATP. The ice is thin. Funk. So
Yeah.
don't be afraid to dart, including
Right.
the guest. But I think we were.
Including the host.
I thought we were well behaved, though.
Yeah.
I thought we were. Yeah.
You guys did a great job. There was a moment during the timeout where I thought about hitting you guys with it.
Yeah.
I don't know the etiquette, if you will.
Timeout wise, yeah.
He is a bit of a one-man band. He's having to do a
Doing
lot
great.
back there. So
He's doing great.
Yeah.
He's got the cymbals are on the knees. He's got the accordion. He's got the horn. Wah, wah,
Juggling.
juggling. All right. Let's get back into it with the NFC North. Mark, get us going with the Bears.
all right, quick little story to get into this one. The first magazine article I ever published was on the subject of astral projection for a publication called Fate Magazine. And I'm keeping this quick, but I wrote about an experience I had during a long water fast when I was living at that Camp Happiness place in the winter, okay? I began having these intense lucid dreams where I would float out of my body. And I could see myself asleep in my actual bedroom. And I was kept floating like down the hallway. I went into different rooms. And I went into this one room in my dream, floating above near the ceiling, where I saw like a bookshelf tipped over. And then when I went into this room, my friend's room, after I woke, the bookshelf was actually tipped over. So I described this experience, but I will say that when I woke, I felt that these dreams brought incredible peace and a feeling of complete newness and intense calm. Like everything was new. Upon awakening, everything and anything felt possible. And that is how I imagine it feels to be a Bears fan right now, after so many days of darkness. Because no team in the NFC has changed more in a calendar year. And I ask you, what is the bar for a successful season? What should we reasonably expect from this very different-looking Bears team?
I'm sorry. I know we're supposed to now get to the Bears, but when you set it up that way, you were at Camp Happiness in the summer? I mean, in the winter?
Oh, yeah.
Was this like a delinquent boys' home?
No, there was
I thought it was just like a place you went for
You
like
would-
6 weeks.
You would do
Winter
a
break.
small amount of work with school groups that would come in on like Monday and Tuesday, but other than that, you free food, your own room, no
But
responsibilities.
what an unbelievable.
It was
place.
wonderful, yeah.
It's a great question about the Bears because
Sorry, Bears fans. You got
Yeah.
122.
maybe you get a timeout here. Because to me, the answer is just Caleb Williams is great. And I don't care anything else that happens. Like that they provide enough support offensively and that maybe he wins Offensive Rookie of the Year and that he's the guy and you come out of the season just feeling like we got a quarterback. Because I think beyond that, it's a really good division. I don't put them ahead of the Packers or the Lions. You said everything's new? I mean, Matt Eberflus isn't new.
He looks new.
Do I-
He looks out fresh. He's got
Do
a
I
beard. He looks
fully
better.
think that like their defense is going to stay at that high of a level? They don't really have much of a pass rush. Ownership has been an issue over the years. Like, as long as Caleb Williams is Caleb Williams, then it's a success, even if they win 7 or 8 games. That's how I feel.
The old spruce.
Ooh, yeah, love that.
Right on.
The project we're going to talk about later, you got to be in a lot of rooms and listen to a lot of things and hear about just like league-wide chatter, not team-specific. I did not hear people gush as much as they did about Rome Odunze. It blew me away. I mean, I love him as a prospect. I knew he was going to be a great player. I love his film, but the way that people raved about him as like, this is the guy to pair with that dude, and I just think that that's going to be really fun.
Got me right in the face. The Bears on paper are a great looking offense all of a sudden. But so much is contingent is Caleb as good as people think he could be. But if he is, this division is fun.
I think it's the best
can be
division.
wild.
I think
You got
it's
the
better.
AFC North where any team can make the playoffs, and I could sing any one of these teams in the NFC North can make the playoffs.
Absolutely. I think, you could dart Mark there too.
Why in that situation?
Right in the eye. Got you in the eye. Patch for life. All right. Up next, Jourdan, defending division champion Lions. Right in the face.
There's really no other way to put it at this point. The Lions know what they are about. Under Brad Holmes, this is a team that is going to flat out pick players they like or are best available on their board, regardless of perceived positional value or consensus charting. I also saw some commentary about the trades up. I get that, but I want to reiterate that Holmes came up through Les Snead and the Rams. When Snead felt the roster was ready to break through up to the next tier, he started swinging hard regardless of the cost. And what some don't realize is that to NFL teams, it's not just playoff team or not playoff team. Once you become a playoff team, there are actual tiers to the dance, like breaking glass into legitimate Super Bowl contention. I get the concern, and they have to be the right players, but at least the Lions have told us who they think they are. They want to win. They think they can now, and the cost doesn't matter. Wondering about the quarterback extension. I'm really curious to see what the framework of a possible Jared Goff extension might be, and good for him, by the way.
Absolutely. And you said it, I believe, around Philadelphia, spamming an area in need. Their cornerbacks were an issue for them last year, and they go and they draft two cornerbacks at the top of this draft. So if that defense takes a step and the offense kind of remains where it is, they were a Final Four team last year.
They had a 17-point lead
Showtime.
in the NFC Championship game.
Yeah, I think this is like this. And unlike some of these other teams that spam a position, this was kind of like their last overt position of need, and it happened perfectly for them. And like Terry and Arnold to go to them is a total coup. I would just ask you one question about Brad Holmes, like, because it's hard to get to know these GMs from a distance. Like, what kind of words would you use to characterize him? Because I think he's been one of the quickest team builders around.
I think he's brilliant. A lot of the stuff that the Rams would get sort of external praise for when they were identifying middle and late round players, like Brad was one of the people who helped set and identify that framework and who really pushed for that type of thinking, and along with Les and some of the other people in that building. So this doesn't surprise me at all to see him killing it.
But like the Rams, he's not afraid to do things differently. I mean, they're feeling themselves. They traded a future third for a kid from Canada, and then they drafted a safety who had 28 snaps at running back to play running back. So it's like they're feeling themselves. I would push back slightly that they don't have any needs. I don't think, first of all, they could use another receiver for sure. And then they absolutely need another pass rusher. Like, Aiden Hutchinson needs help. Maybe it's James Houston. They've put a lot of resources there. To me, they're thin. There were reports they actually were kind of trade up for Darius Robinson until Terry and Arnold, the cornerback, fell. And so that shows that they had an internal kind of thought, too. We maybe need a little more beef up
They
front.
just don't have, like, oh, my God, this is going to cost.
It's nothing
like,
crazy.
They're pretty solid all over the place.
Agree.
The Detroit fan base love affair for Jared Goff is so sweet.
Awesome.
Just chanting his name throughout the draft.
Yeah.
Just independent of anything. It's just like, Jared Goff, Jared Goff.
I mean, they had a few beers in them, I'm sure, but it was a... I knew it was coming, so I stopped talking.
Also, many of them
Flinch.
were completely sober, I would imagine.
There
And
was
just love that this underdog as much as an underdog can be a former first overall pick, Jared Goff is really a guy that they've gotten behind as an overlooked entity that rose up.
I'm not suggesting you need to be drunk to like Jared Goff. I think he's
Right.
earned their trust in
That's-
many ways.
That's
so.
important to clarify. Greggy on the rising Green Bay Packers.
Yeah, I think Jordan Love's going to get a new contract this offseason. I think Jared Goff, as we just mentioned, will as well. And those come later in the offseason. We talked about how the first three picks the Packers took in this draft, I think, are going to be able to play right away. They're still a little short at cornerback. I think they could be a Stephon Gilmore team. They would make some sense to me. But I'm looking at their receiver group, and I'm just curious, how do you guys think they're going to shake out? You got Romeo Doubs, Christian Watson, Jaden Reed, I feel like we kind of know who Jaden Reed is, and Dontavian Wicks. Like, I'm fascinated to just see how these four line up, because to me, they all have potential to be like 1,200-yard receivers, and yet it's a good problem to have. I don't know how they're going to line up 1 to 4.
To that point, I almost wonder if we see Matt LaFleur do more with the tight ends this year. It seemed like that was something when they drafted last year. It seemed like something that they might trend. And then mid-season, you saw them doing a lot of the similar stuff as Sean McVay with some of that, escort motion, the sifts and the run game, those types of things, as well as, getting those tight ends going. So I think that maybe we could see that too. And yeah, it's crowded, but I mean, Jordan Love can throw it all around the yard. So
Right. That's why it's like the Bears' optimism is great, but it's like you look at the Packers and the Lions; those teams seem further along.
They all grew up so quickly, and it's I guess you don't when it comes to the wide receivers and like in today's league, if you're a team without that clear dominant number one alpha guy, like you can kind of use them in a lot of different ways. And I think there was some unexpected growth and regression by some of them last year too. So it's like get them on the field and see what happens, and let like the hot horse run it.
The hot horse. The Christian Watson side of this is kind of interesting because everybody developed very quickly as the quarterback, and Watson, who was the apparent breakout star in the final Rodgers season, was not really the guy that we were talking about by the end
That's
of the
who
season.
I was like we're sort of pointing to there.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Hey,
like
wide receiver 4 at this point, I would say.
and that's interesting. Like, where does he fit in? Because he's had issues staying healthy. Did you know that he has worked with a quote special lab to address his hamstring issues?
No.
What kind of lab?
A special one.
hamstring lab.
Yeah, a hamstring lab.
Okay.
So keep an eye on Watson and where he fits in on this, because remember he was super dynamic at the end of 22, and now maybe he's healthy in 24.
Those labs are often like in Sweden, by the way.
Isn't it weird? That's always the way. Gotta get on the plane.
Fun fact,
What'd I
hat
do?
tip to our friend Justice over at Acme Packing Company. The Packers have added 35 players in the last 3 drafts, most of any team since 2022, 13
Whoa.
first to third rounders and 22 in the other rounds. Basically, that's called dart throwing. No pun intended for the nature of the program.
This is a dart firing.
It's volume drafting. A couple of those guys are bound to work out when you have the ability to draft with that kind of a volume. You can only draft with that kind of a volume if you already have your QB and they have their QB.
Unbelievably done. First time in studio doing around the NFC, sticking the landing
I
there.
feel like I'm gonna burst into tears at any minute.
All right, let's move.
I'm so nervous.
Let's move to the Minnesota Vikings, okay? I mean, if you're nervous, I'd like to see what you're like when you're cool, calm, and collected. You're killing it, Jordan. Give me a new clock. Give me that new clock. The Vikings deserve it, okay? 2 fun plots to track around the 2-time team of around the NFL, okay?
Whoops.
Will Sam Darnold be able to hold off J.J. McCarthy in a summer camp competition? Will McCarthy ever even get a true opportunity to be the week 1 starter? We know he's going to play, but how does this summer break down? And then there's the defense, which was, an absolute sieve in 2022, despite their great record. They improved to a middle-of-the-pack unit statistically under Brian Flores, and now talent continues to flow in on that side of the ball, and it makes a possibility that this team defense could all of a sudden become team strength. And it's also a reminder, scheme change, coordinator change, and a few players, how quickly you could turn around a unit in this league. So my general takeaway here, the Vikings are not going to be many people's darling pick to get back to the playoffs, especially in this division, which we've just broken down is very competitive. But disregard them at your own peril.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, give Sam a chance.
I think Sam has a little chance.
I was surprised reading up on them ahead of this today that I kind of assumed once they took McCarthy there, and he's a veteran guy. I mean, he played a lot in college and was a quote unquote winner. Felt like a week 1 guy, but they not necessarily is that their path here.
To pivot a little, I do get trading up for Dallas Turner. Great player. Even though they have defensive players, even though the moves they made in free agency, I do remember Van Ginkel had a hurt foot into the spring. So maybe you're kind of just making sure you're shoring up that position just in case. And, I think my colleague Alec Lewis at The Athletic pointed out a little bit worried about their interior offensive line. We're talking about another slider-framed guy, Tyler Williams, who runs their sports science department over there in Minnesota. He will have had the DEXA scan. He will he will know like what he still needs to add and how, and also importantly, like how long it's going to take, in particular with what they're dealing with on the offensive line.
I mean, I think the thing that could get McCarthy in there, if not just by week 1, I just assume week 1 at this point, but that's fine. But you've got Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, Hawkinson, Aaron Jones, and you're right. Like their interior line, per PFF is a bit of a trouble, but this is a good starting place for any rookie compared to some places you could go.
It is outstanding, especially with the coaching. And I'm really encouraged they invested so much in the defense, because I'd be worried that Flores' defense will come back to the pack. Like, you see that big 1-year bump when you change schemes sometimes and you're doing something creative. Can you keep that going into year 2? It usually doesn't happen that way. That's why I'm a little worried about Schwartz and the Browns, too. It's just like when you pop up that high and you're creative, but they added talent. They added Grenard. They added Blake Cashman. They added Van Ginkel. They added Dallas Turner. You had that much talent, they should be better.
Give up a lot for Dallas Turner, but they've got 11.
I believe to that point, I think they only have 3 picks right now in the 2025 NFL draft.
But they didn't have to trade up a bundle to get McCarthy at all. That helps.
He wasn't out of bounds, Mark. You just shot him a glare, but he has to.
I'm
That's
not
his
glaring
job.
at him, but I feel like I've been better behaved on this quasi Fugazi dart situation than most during these.
Quasi
It did
Fugazi
8-0.
dart situation.
Today,
That's disrespecting the process.
Today's been a problem for me, and I acknowledge that. So I'm going to try to work on it over the second half of the show.
I think when you wear the black button up, kind of like that bad boy Sessler comes out. The bad angels in charge.
That doesn't take long. That doesn't take too much effort for that.
My favorite. All right, let's take a break and come back with the NFC South. All right, we're back. Let's keep moving. We got Jourdan Rodrigue here. She's killing it. She keeps saying she's nervous, but she's not performing as if she's nervous.
You wouldn't know. And she keeps reminding us that it's happening.
Right. I would say, unsolicited advice. You don't have to keep saying you're nervous. Just pocket that.
I feel like you guys can all see my hand.
No, you're good.
No.
You're good. You're doing great. We're having a great time with you. I feel like the show has been very informative and, dare I say, entertaining. That's what we're going for. Entertainment, informative Venn diagram, and then there's just a big Jourdan head right in the middle. You're killing it. So let's move forward now with utter and complete confidence. How about that?
Okay.
That was the pep talk. Let's go into the NFC South with the Falcons.
I don't have much to add to the Penix Cousins dialogue that hasn't already been covered on
The
this
discourse.
show and beyond. But I do have one extra thought after once watching the Rams trade away their former quarterback, a number 1 overall pick who they signed to a massive extension they had not started paying yet that turned into a huge amount of dead money. It's clear to me many teams are starting to fear less and less the financial, capital, public questioning consequences of their own actions as long as they ultimately get the quarterback right. And that's at the big as long as too, has to still be the right guy. I'm a Michael Penix fan. I think he rules. I'm less worried about the age and injury stuff than other people might be. I also understand why they went and got Cousins when they did and why they did. Just the decisions in sequence and not each in a vacuum is what is breaking our brains, and rightfully so. At the end of the day, someone just needs to get the freaking ball to Kyle Pitts. Elsewhere in their draft, I loved the Brandon Dorless pickup. He's super underrated in my opinion. I heard he was popular on a lot of teams' draft boards. He can rush the heck out of the quarterback. He's versatile. If Jimmy Lake is moving to a 3-4, it looks like the Falcons are seeking out bigger edges, dynamic 3 techs who could possibly do some 4-eye stuff. Concerned about corner depth, there are a couple older free agents out there, including Akello Witherspoon, who has a connection with Raheem Morris and Lake.
Everything's been said about the Cousins part of it. The only thing that because I was supported it when it happened, and I think Greg, you did. It's just go get all the quarterbacks you need. And this is the league today. The way it happened in the order is eyebrow raising, but there is a suggestion out there that Cousins is a little bit more sensitive than other types of quarterbacks, and if there's a reason he can't operate in the in training camp or the preseason, I think the type of quarterback that Penix is was like this laser arm, like the strongest arm around, like that just gets into the mind of everyone, and maybe the mind of Kirk Cousins and the fan base, because it's sudden you got this like titanic like potential behind Kirk Cousins. That to me is a little unsettling from a team angle.
The human part of it is the most concerning. I don't think you can spend too many resources on quarterback, but it is concerning, especially with a guy that we all remember. Like, everyone has this image of like, it was MVP candidate Kirk Cousins. It's like, dude, I've seen that Kirk Cousins a ton of times over the last 12 years. And what usually happens is like a 5-game slump. Like, he's not always that guy. He's also coming off an Achilles, so it does add a lot of drama to the mix, especially because I don't think the defense will necessarily support them. They need their offense to be good. Talent-wise, it's not a good defense.
And that's why part of the process that felt flawed to me and many others out there is like, then use a top 10 pick on a defensive player or trade down and take 2 defensive players. It would have made so much more. If they just, to me, would have, it boils down to this. If you would have gotten a lower tiered quarterback, like a hold the fort guy, and then gotten Penix, everything makes sense. Like everything checks out. It's that investment in Cousins that will always irk me and many others. I mean, we could TO it if we want to continue to talk about it, but
I think we have.
We will.
Yeah.
We
Continue
shall.
to.
We shall. All right, here we go. Greg on the Panthers.
Like the concept of Jonathan Brooks behind this meaty offensive line that they've invested in. I like that they kept Ejiro Evero, who you're familiar with, intimately there, Jourdan, just in terms of he was there with the Rams. But, like, I don't love that they have less talent on their defense. You know, they did trade away Brian Burns. Leggett seems like a boomer bust pick. I want to have optimism, but I'm not feeling it. Like, does anyone else have any optimism here?
I think Dave Canales is a reason for optimism based on solely on his work with quarterbacks that were, on the edge of a non-existence before he took over. I thought the Robert Hunt signing was really important and good along the offensive line. Yeah, we don't know about Leggett, but I think Jonathan Brooks, it's like, if anything, it happened almost a year too late and it exposed Bryce Young a year ago, and we don't really have a full read on what he is at this point. I'm a little concerned, but yes, it was the offseason to throw resources at your quarterback and get a quarterback coach that can come in and help him.
If Leggett was going into a Frank Reich offense, I wouldn't have liked the pick. I like the pick because I think that they'll do more. They're going to do more motions, misdirection, shifts, stuff that makes sense. And I think that one of the quotes from the post-draft press conference captured by the great Panthers beat writer, Joe Person. Yes, that is his real name.
Legend.
We know Joe. Yeah.
Yeah, just for the audience,
Yeah.
Joe Person, you're like, okay, is he in the missing persons program?
That's like back when
Yeah.
when you get your last name based on like if you were a carpenter, it's just this Joe Person.
Yeah, Joe
You're
Person.
categorized.
He
Someone
is-
got lazy in
He's a
Ellis
human.
Island. It's like, I don't know, person.
He is indeed a person.
Yeah.
That's what he wants you to believe. So this quote really stood out to me. You can give him the ball in different ways, including carries. Please, God, let us see more motions, misdirections, sweeps, quick game, lots of different layers, 3 tiers in your route concepts. And let's see this guy turn into the do-it-all Debo Samuel. And he seems like a great dude.
Yeah, and I guess the optimism, Greg, is it can't be worse than last year. And you dedicated in free agency, you spent money to help the protection side of things. 3 of your first 4 picks are offensive players. Hopefully, the scheme, as we're saying, is more imaginative.
Deontay Johnson.
And you just you figure some things out. And people that are really draft heads are saying this kid Bryce Young, do not count him out. He got screwed in so many ways. He would drop back. His receivers are getting no separation. He's not getting protected. Nobody would have had a chance. So maybe this year will be better than last.
He reminds me so much of Alex Smith in terms of playing style, in terms of the catastrophic rookie year. Alex Smith had the worst rookie year of any top shelf quarterback I've ever seen. They brought in North Turner his second year, and suddenly he was league average. I think that's the path.
Team of around the NFL?
No.
Our original team around the NFL, the Carolina Panthers.
Interesting. Okay, the Saints. The Saints have a lot of work to do to get this roster back to true Super Bowl contention, and the draft wasn't ideal toward that goal with only 2 selections out of the first 149 on the board. Still, they added a blue-chip prospect at offensive line, a potential Marshawn Lattimore successor and teammate at corner. That made sense. Keep an eye on the QB position this fall because New Orleans drafted Spencer Rattler with the 150th pick. He's a guy that's got, some tools and people kind of into him in terms of that type of mid-round QB. Given Derek Carr and everything around Derek Carr, you're going to imagine if this team is middle of the road or worse like last year, it's going to get really loud really quickly around a quarterback change.
Ted Wynn did an article on a bunch of people talking about quarterback mechanics, and people were raving. Coaches were raving about Spencer Rattler's mechanics. So might be kind of a sneaky good. I'll defer to Greg
Good
on
name,
those
by
Saints
the way.
things because I know you're a fan, but
I'm not a fan. I do follow him.
yeah, but I think he's
got it.
maybe a sneaky good pick there.
He reminds me a little Sam Howell in terms of a guy that you thought might be a first-round pick at some point, and probably is even more talented as a thrower and could develop. So that was a good dart throw. I do think the new Derek Carr contract really slipped under the radar this year as they continued to kick the can down the corner, down the road or whatever, in terms of trying to save salary cap space. They've had like the normal offseason everyone wanted finally. They did stay quiet. It was a pretty normal draft. But they did kick more future money into Derek Carr's contract into 25. So it'll be more painful if they do want to get rid of him. It feels like he's going to be there the next 2 years.
I kind of like their draft up top, except that you were forced to take a tackle. And they've taken an offensive or defensive lineman in the first round of 9 of the last 10 drafts. So they've got a type. They've got a thing they like to do. But you had to do that because of Ryan Ramczyk. And you had to go get Kool-Aid McKinstry, because I'm not assuming this, but I think the Marshawn Lattimore is sort of the last piece of drama surrounding the NFC South.
I'm glad you mentioned that. Their top 4 cornerbacks are Paulson Adebo, Kool-Aid McKinstry, Marshawn Lattimore is obviously number 1, and Alontae Taylor. That is a loaded cornerback room. It's kind of awesome, but you're right. It makes you wonder if someone gets dealt in training camp or something. And it might not be Lattimore. It could be like Adebo, who's in a contract year. It could be Alontae Taylor, who's been a little up and down. But people would be into those cornerbacks.
I like the McKinstry pick.
Yeah.
I think that dude's a badass. I think that's a great pick.
Got him at 41. Like,
Dennis
the
Allen
value.
knows how to. They've known, and Mickey Loomis has known how to pick corners.
There was, by the way, talk around Rattler and why did he fall to the 5th round, and one of them was that he appeared on a reality TV show in high school in which he came off extremely poorly.
Have you watched any of it?
I must dig it up. I must watch.
I mean, I think number one, people grow and change, and that's what his camp was trying to stress. But it is an unpleasant watch. It's not great for his Q rating.
I kind of led him into it, not purposefully, but
I
needed that info.
I was providing information.
But you had an option. You had an option there. You could have.
But I get caught staring at you, and then I'm not watching the clock. So
right, but you had the option there to fully flesh that out, which you did, which the show needed.
Yeah.
Or you could have just sat there quietly and let the clock tick out, and then it's a worse show. But you don't take a dart to the face.
If it makes you feel any better, I feel like really bad every time I shoot the dart at Mark.
Yeah,
that does make me feel better.
I see it coming from like a mile away.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I have to though.
I should do better. I should
feel bad.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't. Well, but he like drew me into the damn.
Especially when he turns his head and gives you those Manson lamps.
I feel bad. I feel bad.
All right, that is that the NFC South?
No,
it is not.
There is one more team.
There is one more team.
The defending champion.
Now I'm going to get the Manson lamps. Oh, they are the defending division champions. Somehow the Bucks. Go, Mark, go.
Sort of like a meat and potatoes draft for the Bucks. I think Graham Barton, the more I've read about him, it's like round 1, tough, immediate starter at center. They really needed that. Both Bucks guards last year, Brent Bredesen and Cody Mock, who I really liked the look of in terms of his wild madness. But they're hot but mostly cold a year ago. They were 27th in rushing EPA, the Bucks. They were 26th in short yardage situations. They had PFF's 5th worst run blocking grade. And it's like, if you want this Baker thing to continue, I think Baker's been a little overpraised for this like great season he had. But like, for this to happen 2 years in a row with Baker, you need a better ground game. And so I think this was a smart pick. I do have a question for Jourdan, though, because Mayfield is onto his like 444th offensive coordinator after Canales went to Carolina. So he does know Liam Cohen a little bit to some degree. But there have been weird whispers about Cohen in other places, not totally being a favorite of everyone. Like, do you think this can be a smooth transition for Baker? I just don't like quarterbacks that switch schemes and coordinators every 365 days.
I mean, I think Liam and Baker will get along really well. And like I said, so much happened in 22 to the Rams, some outside their control, some inside their control. And it just was an all-around disaster. No one person was the reason for that disaster. It was all around a total.
But if you had to pick one person, it was probably Liam Cohen.
It was Gregg, actually.
It's Gregg.
Spin.
Nailed it.
But yeah, no, I mean, Baker is a player that Liam will know how to work with and use, and like I think he will remind him of a lot of the college quarterbacks he had great success with. Maybe not the arm strength that he was working with Will Levis, but the timing stuff, the quick game, some of the underneath things that the Baker really can get into a rhythm very fast doing. That's right up Liam Cohen's alley. So I'm
That's
curious
comforting.
to see how it works, but I do know that they'll get along. I mean, they're both like they'll be fine. Yeah.
They have a ton of continuity and on both sides of the ball, especially the defense. And I just don't get why the Falcons are negative money to win this division. Like, no way to me. Like, I would happily take the
For
field.
those that don't dig in on that realm,
Just
what
like
does that mean?
it is more likely, the odds are saying that the Falcons win
From
the
an expert.
division than the other three teams combined, essentially. That it's like a greater than 50% chance they win the division. And the Bucks and the Saints are way behind them. It's just like, I don't see that. Like, people keep sleeping on this Bucks team. It's just a solid football team. Like,
People are just like throwing up their hands with the NFC South.
Right.
It's hard
Right.
to really just
And-
figure
and
it
the
out.
To me, the three of
Bucks
them are
get
all-
overlooked, though. They just get overlooked. don't you
right.
think?
And to me, the three of them are in the same ballpark where it's like, you're probably a below average NFL team, but one team's going to win the division.
I like the Jalen McMillan pick. One of my under the radar favorite picks. Really great underneath. Will help with that pop gun stuff that Baker likes to do.
Also, why the Falcons should have taken a defensive player and went for the division and get a home game in the playoffs, and you never know what happens. Whatever. Let's take a break, and we'll finish it out with the NFC West. All right, we're back. We are closing out around the NFC in 48 minutes, exactly 48 minutes, not a second over, with the NFC West. And Greg, get us going with the cards.
The Arizona Cardinals, after they put Kyler Murray into the starting lineup with Drew Petzing as his offensive coordinator, were 9th in EPA per play for the rest of the season. That is buoyed by being 2nd in rushing. I think this is a good, and Kyler's a big part of that.
Give it
Because
to me. Get dirty.
Yeah,
get the numbers.
I'm excited to get dirty with this
Gross.
team. Adding Marvin Harrison. I think they're a really well-run offensive team. He was a good hire. I think they added the most exciting running back in the draft in Benson. Is this a top 10 offense?
Whoa. All right. Where were they finished? Where did they finish after Kyler came back?
I mean, technically, they were a top 10 offense in EPA per play already, but can you keep that up a whole season? That's obviously not the only stat out there. I think they got a chance to be pretty exciting.
Top 10 feels rich, but they down the stretch. I think Petzing is like a good play call. Comes from the Stefanski tree, and that's good for tight ends. That's good for. I think we didn't like
Connor and Trey Benson are an awesome duo.
Yeah, I think
at
that's
running
like that. There's a lot of optimism around that, and Kyler looked good when he came back, but it's like a full off season together and all that. It's like there's signs to suggest they could like pick up where they left off. They're a well coached team.
Yeah. Thank you for making that point. Actually, that goes into my notes. So that was
Okay.
Nice tee up.
There you go.
Way to go, Mark.
I knew you would have my back on this, Mark. Yeah, I think they have some actually really talented up-and-coming coaches. Drew Terrell is their new receivers coach. Nick Rallis, their defensive coordinator. They're young guys, but I think they're super talented. I met Nick Rallis at a coaching incubator a couple years ago, and he was sitting on the offensive side, so he was trying to learn from a lot of those guys. So there's something cooking under the radar there on the defensive side, I think. Matthew Stafford said last year this was the one defense that he saw that kind of was like, what the hell is that? And they were kind of doing this walk-around pre-snap thing. It was really interesting, and then they just ran the ball for 400 yards. So
I'm curious, yeah, because it could take a big jump. If Marvin Harrison is that guy, Kyler Murray, is Kyler Murray now, like we said, full year removed, is he that guy again? I'm looking at some of his, earlier years. He had 93 rushing attempts as a rookie in 16 games. That went up to 133 his second year. His third year in 14 games, he was on pace to go over 100 again. Last year in 8 games, 44 rushes, so a bit under that 100 pace. Where does he now, like around 100 rushes, feels like a great spot for him, especially if he's moving well and feels good. And if he can add that element of his game back in full with having a big-time number 1 wide receiver potentially, yeah, the offense could take a significant jump.
I think one other thing, like Monty Austinfort, 2 years in a row has had a very rock-solid plan with the draft, with the offseason. They look different, and I think their front office, we know, I mean, under Steve Keim, that was plaguing them for a long time.
Was that to the establishment?
Yeah,
Was
it
that
was
to our producer?
No, it was not to the. Randy's been
The
a gentleman
listeners?
about this. No, it's just kind of like,
Jourdan?
like the greater world or universe thinks they're going to catch me. You're going beyond 0, 0, 0, and they didn't.
Got
So
him.
F you.
Except you guys all did this.
Well, there's no regard for the rules, so
It's not connected directly anymore to the team talk. That's a little understood aspect of all of this.
I'm new. Sorry.
Yep. Here we go. Jourdan, your team, the Rams.
While few classes in recent history hit like the Rams did in 2023, there's a lot to like this year about the way they sought out the combination of Jared Verse and teammate Braden Fisk at 19 and 39. They overpaid to trade up for Fisk, but I'm of the understanding that once the board fell their way and they got Verse, one of their 3 favorite players in the whole class and their top outside linebacker, they were always going to try to get Fisk. And they believed in paying more for the plug-and-play chemistry on a defensive line now without Aaron Donald. They did say they could never replace him with just one player, so here are 2. Blake Corum, the third-round running back, again, a little high for generally what we see with running backs, but basically gives them Kyren Williams and an intact scheme, kind of left-handed when Kyren Williams was out. In light of his injury history, he missed 4 games in 2023. Also, maybe wouldn't have been able to be healthy for a deeper postseason push. He got hurt in that Detroit game. Rams fans do not want to hear this, I understand, but on the Matthew Stafford contract situation, Sean McVay kind of admitted that this situation is ongoing after Rap Sheet's initial report last Thursday night that Matthew Stafford wants more guaranteed money on his contract. Been simmering for a little while. I don't think it's anything to like freak out about right now. He's at OTAs. The Rams, it's kind of awkward a little bit. They made a documentary. It was really, really well done. It was outstanding, but it was also parts of it where like how beat up he gets during a season.
Sure.
So when you enter that into the guaranteed money conversation, it's just something to keep an eye on. I do think they're going to try to find a win-win solution. That's my opinion. The Rams spent the spring beefing up his offensive line and his run game. There's no reason to think that he won't or can't play a few more years. Like I said, he's been at voluntary OTAs. He's been throwing it around. Dude's a badass when he's healthy.
Turned 36 in February, so yeah, he's basically at Kirk Cousins' age. You think these guys have their body holds up 2-3 more years, and this is a window for the Rams with this high-level potential Hall of Famer.
We all watched a lot of Rams together in some of our Monday NFL Plus shows, and he looked as good as he's ever looked last season. So I stayed the course there. I think a lot of people were wondering when Kyren Williams was not on the field, they were a different offense, and he led the league in yards per game. I mean, he really hit the scene. But with Blake Corum, is it what happens fantasy wise? Do you think how they have both of them at the same time?
I couldn't tell you. I don't know. I
mean,
you were early on the Kyren Williams.
Have a big role.
Might have a bigger role than Cam Akers front in the
right because they signed Boston Scott too. I mean, that's just the third
You're
guy.
Looking at Kyren still being the lead rusher, the lead back, but over time, especially a long season, they expect to go to the postseason this year if they have healthy Matthew Stafford. So over time, you're probably looking at an increase in Blake Corum's snaps. I don't know what the fantasy football language would be for that, but stashing him or something, or maybe, get him and stash him.
Handcuff? Is that what it is, Greg?
Timeout. All right. We got to talk about this feature, this monster, 2-parter from Jourdan. The second part is coming out later in the week. The first part dropped today. Finding Rams, 1 year behind the scenes of the NFL draft scouting process, part 1. Really well done, beautifully written and reported. Even we're talking about the artwork is tremendous by The Athletic on it. Everybody's got to read it. I think just to get into this conversation, Jourdan, because you obviously did a ton of work and you were embedded behind the scenes. There's an irony to me that this team, Les Snead famously wore the F Them Picks T-shirt after they won the Super Bowl. But just because they didn't have first-round picks doesn't mean that this team doesn't absolutely value and obsess over these draft classes, and you really go behind the scenes in a way that's really illuminating in this piece.
Well, thank you. Happy to be here to talk about it, first of all. I felt like last year when we talked about the Play Callers series, Greg, you and Marc said some really nice things about what it reminded you of, and
Dan just was not on that episode. Dan withheld.
I was just doing a thumbs down. Turn my mic off.
I know he doesn't listen.
It was 6 a.m. in Tokyo doing that show. I remember that.
But you guys also said something that resonated with me, and forgive me if my voice cracks. But you said that these are the types of things that Wes would really get into. For me, that kept me pushing. into this new space, which was very unfamiliar territory for me. I've covered a lot about team building, but I've never been behind the scenes in a scouting department for as long a period of time, the 10 months as this was. And it was the entire time I was thinking, this is the coolest thing. This is so, like, to get to explain even a piece of what this looks like and how it works. It just like lit me up on the inside, and like I cannot emphasize enough. Like, I mean, doing this project, just like play callers altered me forever, this also has altered me forever.
Like if you had 10 pages of notes for this episode, how much dense, research and personal literature came out? Do you have stashed away somewhere, like in your apartment or mansion, wherever you live?
Certainly not. Certainly not the
Oh
latter.
yeah, the Athletic.
Yeah.
They're paying monster bucks.
Moving right along. So it was 186 pages of notes from on-site reporting. A lot of stuff was off the record, so you're obviously not recording notes at that time. You're sort of absorbing and listening. And also I think like 37 Post-its around on like just to help set up structure and all of those things. It's really fun when a project's over to like peel the Post-its off the cabinet. It's very satisfying. No longer look like a serial killer in my own home. But yeah, it was an extraordinarily cool thing to get to do. The fact that James Gladstone, the director of scouting, and Les Snead were open to it. James came up to me on the sideline at training camp and was like, "Love the play callers, wish there was one about scouts." And I looked at him for all of 2 seconds and I was like, "Can there be?" And he thought I was joking. And then I pitched it to him and Les, and I think Les maybe still thought I was joking until about 6 months ago. And because I'd been in the meetings, I just kept showing up. And then it just was this very cool, there was a lot of trust there, which I don't take for granted, but I think they understood what I was trying to do. I wasn't trying to say this is better or worse or the other. I was trying to amplify the process and the language of a group of people with continuity who have created this thing behind the scenes that works for them. Not to compare or contrast or anything like that, but to show how something works.
Right. That's what I took. Part 1 is great. I'm really looking forward to part 2. And one of my takeaways would just be, I didn't understand. I don't think the average fan would understand just how different the Rams certainly do the evaluation process. And then it made me think like, they're not the only ones, and that each team is attacking this entire process in such a different way. And maybe there kind of is a conventional way to do it, but like how many teams do you think, or like how many different ways are there? Because the way they do it, I suspect is totally their own way of doing it. And like, what did you find different about it?
I think there are 32 different ways of approaching this. And like I said, that's where I think we on the outside, we get into rankings and grades and things like that. But like, if their process works for them and it's different to another process in another building, they're not weighing that or leveraging that. They're looking for what fits them. And some teams do this very well and have a very functional behind the scenes process for a draft calendar. And as you see, like some teams just can't seem to find that momentum or can't seem to like sort of gather themselves. One of the things that's really one of the biggest things I learned from this reporting this out over the last year was this isn't really about players or picks, like the result. This is more about the process and the language of that process, and how they basically built an alphabet and then evolved it over time into a language that builds out what it is exactly that they do. And I know that sounds like kind of galaxy brain or like, what you were reading at Camp Happiness, but at the same time, it's a living thing, this language. And I think the number one reason why failure compounds in NFL buildings is the loss of that language. When too quick
continuity is so big.
Too quick turnover, whether it's in the scouting front office department, personnel department, or even the coaching staff that also has to assimilate and help build and evolve out that language. And this is one of the most, they've been together for so long at this point not just Les and Sean, but that entire scouting department has been together for at least a decade.
Crazy.
And they have built out this language that it's a living thing at this point.
There's one quick thing is there's also a very human element to this because I've always thought like the life of a scout would be very appealing to a certain personality if you like don't mind being like a road warrior out on the grind. Like it's so you show how much it's relationships with schools. But one little thing, like here's what scouts do. What they have like a coda. It said, stay at hotels with free breakfast. Fill an insulated coffee cup with eggs and bacon and bring it to the school to consume mid-morning.
Yeah, that one
That's
caught
a
me
little
too.
psychotic, but
I
I like
noted that in my notes as well. What are we doing? We get a fresh breakfast.
I just want to see what it looks like.
You got to save the dollars and cents. And
But they don't have time because they're at this place and they're not going to get fed while they're there all day.
I
right?
guarantee you 31 teams are reading what you wrote, Jourdan, because
Sorry, Les.
there's a reason why and they weighed that, I'm sure, but like there's a reason why good teams stay good and bad teams stay bad. And look at the Rams to go from 17 through 23 without a first round pick, but remain pretty consistently one of the better teams in the NFC. Shows you how they've been able to keep the roster churning and stay competitive despite having those high-end picks. I thought that's very interesting. The other thing I want to read here. So you were talking about this almost sentient process they have now. And I'm going to read Jordan's reporting here and writing. Most NFL teams, and by the way, this is why Northeastern class of 02. This is why journalism matters. Sports journalism. It's fun what we do, but having people that are really smart and curious to be able to go behind the scenes and then write something like this and allow us to understand the sport in a different, smarter way. Thank you, Jourdan. To The Athletic. Now I'm going to read what you wrote. Most NFL teams have a data and information processing system, usually constructed in-house, in which scouts, coaches, medical staff, front office executives, and others input notes on the players. The Rams is JARS, the Joint After Action Review System. They go on to say its value lies not only in its player data, it's the keeper of an entire language. Some Rams staffers joke that the system will eventually need a new, more human-sounding acronym to reflect its approaching sentience. Now, let me jump in, if I might.
Please.
And you could relay this or choose not to relay.
I'm
this.
so happy right now.
So it's staring right at them. It's starting to feel like a human, and they want to give it a name that's human. So, and you got JAARS, okay? But what if it was Joint After Action Review Value Internalization System, Jarvis?
Jarvis.
Oh,
Jarvis is right there.
bang.
So close.
Take it to Les.
Please take it to Les.
We've had Les on the show.
That would be my lasting input. Maybe I would get a Super Bowl ring.
You get a football.
It's up to football. Les, if there's a signed football to hand out, if it becomes Jarvis, that's all I ask.
It'd be nice if they had like a fourth-round pick that meant a lot to them that had actually been named Jarvis,
Oh, even better.
I will tell you one last
or they
thing.
should find one.
They probably, knowing them, they would. One last thing to add to, so much of this is still about luck. Part 2, which releases Friday, there's some moments in there that I think you guys will just get a kick out of, about how you can put in like to the nth degree amount of process and preparation, and you can sound, like you're the expert strategist and everything, and then at the very last minute, some crazy could happen.
Mm-hmm.
Right. and like and some of it does come down to luck. I take people through the Puka Nacua pick in the 5th round. There was actually, what people don't realize, there was actually a really interesting strategy behind that pick. They all say now they should have picked him in the 1st, but in the 5th round with their volume in their draft, there was an interesting strategy that part 2 does go into. And then, but there also was luck. There also was a crap load of
Thanks,
luck
Walker.
in that pick as well. And they're the first to admit it.
Was Les Snead, or is Les Snead, because he's probably reading it right about now, annoyed that you've announced to the world that he doesn't know how to change a tire? Which I think a lot of people
That was
don't.
a bit of a La Ravio Magnifico, I thought.
See, I think a lot of
Yeah.
people don't, but you don't want it on record.
that
You
hard.
want people just to think that you probably
It's
can.
it's pretty privileged once again.
He's a beautiful man. All right, time in. Great job.
Thank you. Thank you guys. Seriously.
Oh, did you have an answer on the Les thing?
I
Did
guess
he-
we'll find out, but
Yeah, you'll hear.
I took it more as a I'll get a text maybe like I took it more as a rhetorical.
And I should say that little story ends with Les in a very masculine manner,
yes, absolutely.
firing the tire into the brush.
Yes.
So it kind of saves it a little bit. It's like, yeah, him and his buddy couldn't figure it out, but that tire went flying.
I'm weird because that's like the thing I'll remember the most about the whole thing, and the eggs and bacon in a coffee cup. It's strange.
Let Les know,
Jarvis.
Jarvis.
One sign football. I don't need anything else. All right, let's time back in and head to the 49ers. Drama will continue to swirl around that wide receiver room this spring. Did the Niners take Ricky Pearsall because they plan to trade Ayuk or Samuel, or perhaps an even more dramatic thought exercise for the rest of us? What if Pearsall is a stud and he just makes the offense that much more wicked? Could this team score 500 points? That has not happened by the Bay since the Steve Young Niners of 1994. I believe they won it all that year. The pressure will be immense for San Francisco to finally get over the hump this year, but this roster is as good as any in football. Stay healthy, stay out of trouble, and I think just get ready to watch the Niners kick some more ass this year. I feel very good about this team.
I would love to see a similar article about the way that they draft and like develop talent too, because I thought like to not trade your guys, but then get Ricky Pearsall, who has dropped 5 passes since 2020 and just looks like a Shanahan type. And then there's a second player, Isaac Guerendo, the running back, who had the fastest 40 in the combine, had the best vertical jump, and like Shanahan spoke about that player after the draft, and it was just like, this was just another Shanahan guy. And it's like they added more Niners-y stuff to a roster without stripping away
It's
two of their
kind
best
of
players.
sick when you start to think about it, because you're talking about a running back. They have the best running back on the planet right there, so you could use that guy exactly where you want to dot him into the offense. It's an embarrassment of riches.
Yeah, it's interesting. Tim Kawakami, who works with me at The Athletic, he wrote some really interesting stuff about how you could really pinpoint some of their draft class this year and project them a year or 2 years from now as replacements for some people on their current roster.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
And like trade identification seemed very similar in that way. I found that to be fascinating. And it is interesting. They're trying to win the whole thing and trying to stay in that, like I said, that top tier of contention. But they also at the same time have to start looking toward the future too. And this draft class seemed like they're kind of doing that.
Right. It wasn't just Pearsall. They had a 4th round pick. What was it? Cowing in the 4th round, like at wide receiver too. So you're trying to do both at the same time. I just don't buy any trade talk, including for Juwan Jennings, who's entering a free agent year and is going to get paid somewhere next year. Probably not in San Francisco. Like, they're all systems go. And if it had happened that they could have replaced it in the draft, maybe it was a possibility, but they didn't get the right price. Like, no, they know their window is now. There's no way to me that those guys are getting traded between now and week 1. No chance.
Not now.
By the way,
I think there maybe could have been an offer.
Oh, there
Not
was.
now.
And by the way, the last guy, and now I forget his name. I want to find it. I remember Peter King was in the draft room for the 49ers when Kyle Shanahan probably annoyed the entire scouting process and stood on the table for this running back that he wanted to trade up for. And it was a big thing in the 4th round. It's like he was out of the league in a year. That happens too.
Now, I don't do this, Jordan, and on that side of the table, sometimes there's some heat when certain individuals look at other people's laptops. We do have one remaining timeout, and I thought I saw in bold there was timeout here for the Niners. Was that
Not
that
for
correct?
the Niners.
Okay.
I was stuck in traffic for a long time today.
Yes.
I matched all of you guys to quarterbacks.
Oh.
Like if you
Timeout.
Yeah, well, hold on. We've got to
Time
end
out.
the
So,
This is
sorry,
gonna matter a lot.
Seahawks. We will not be getting to you today.
This is
In
gonna-
fact, let's just cut everything that we've done to this point right out of the intro, right into what Jordan said. Cut everything I just said just now.
I can't believe you looked at
and
my
go.
computer.
I'm
to
sorry,
to-
that was revealing,
Okay.
and I'm apologizing to you.
So this, if you three were quarterbacks, and I
Okay,
like I
I'm
said,
very
I-
much
is-
anticipating this.
this is all a compliment. Okay, just so, right?
Okay.
And also, I listen to the show, and I have for a long time, and we talk about things. And
Mark's entire
sometimes-
May is on the line right now.
but also, I can't pretend to know you on the deepest personal level. So, if I'm wrong, I'm so sorry, but I think I'm right. Okay, Greg, Brock Purdy, short king who loves proving people wrong. Dan, Dan, Josh Allen, fun bit aficionado, golden retriever, parentheses, compliment.
Yeah, no, there's also a guy like a Kato Kalin golden retriever type,
Right.
but I'll take that.
This
And
is
also
the other
Josh Allen's better than Brock Purdy, so okay.
Right.
Now what we're all
I think
waiting
that was
for.
smart that you understood Dan needed to be puffed up the most of any of us, so that makes the most sense.
Listen, you're hitting out again. That's
King,
one
I
of your
called you
traits.
king. Yeah.
Can we get a little drum roll, a little timpani for the Marc Sessler? This is really important.
Mark.
Wait, let's wait for the drums. Do we have them?
It's an actual band back there.
Big funk. All right, here we go. Jourdan, here we go.
Mark. Matthew Stafford.
Mm.
Salt and pepper bearded gunslinger with an appreciation for chaotic darkness.
Totally in.
Yeah.
I had in my mind Stafford is what I was hoping for.
Right.
No, I think
You know.
Those
Thank
are
you. That's
both
those are well
great
done.
choices, and I got a system creation that no one would want on their team with very few physical talent. Like,
Whispers of
basically
benchings in
luck.
December. Yeah, a tough one.
Short king.
I mean, you
But
could.
what about the story of Brock Purdy?
If
though,
we're
Greg?
going on height, then there's no one. Well, Kyler, I guess you could if you wanted to. There's no short quarterbacks.
I think this did.
Philip Rivers
I
was out there.
also had it that you were most likely to correct my assessment.
Oh, no question. No question.
Talk about the scouting.
I was hoping for
Greg,
Phillip
this seems
Rivers.
to have actually bothered you more than perhaps you were expecting it to.
I mean, Brock Purdy. It's a tough spot.
All right. Excellent. Great timeout. Come on, Josh Allen. Now I'm a Bills fan. All right. Time in, and let's close it out. We have just enough time for the Seattle Seahawks and Matthew Stafford. I feel like if we did some AI,
Mm-hmm.
like best case scenario for Sessler looks wise, and you just change some things around,
Okay.
it's Stafford with those gleaming new white teeth he's got and everything like that would check out as well.
I don't think Matthew Stafford would play me if there was a film version of me. Like
we
they'd be
need
like,
an
that
extra,
casting's off. but I,
foot and 80 pounds. But other
We
than
could just
that,
work on that.
we film up. We film up.
That-
Camera tilted upward. Anyway,
I think I'll take that as a positive from you, Dan. I will assess that comment later.
well, it's camera magic. That's all.
Shall we?
Go ahead.
So
Great
talk-
having you here, Jourdan. By the way,
You're looking at my
You're doing
screen
a
again. I
great
know what
job.
you're doing.
I know that.
What
that
does
is,
she have in
what do you got?
bold?
Start
What
this
else do you
over.
have?
She have in bold.
All right, Mark.
Start it over.
Sorry, Mark.
Mark
No, that's
Stafford.
okay.
Sorry,
There you
Matthew.
go.
Sorry,
her
Matthew.
internet runs out in
It's
2
for
minutes.
Seattle. It's for
Matt
people in
Sessler.
Seattle.
Here we go.
We're not going to start it over. The clock.
Let's start this clock over.
Do the clock.
Randy.
Okay,
There
here we go. Sorry, talking about Seattle's draft, one executive told Mike Sando, your coworker at The Athletic,
They hate
nice
each other.
guy. Mike is a very nice guy.
Love Mike.
Never
The scout said of Seattle's draft, it looks like they went Baltimore-ish, meaning build up both lines. And I love the Byron Murphy. This is me talking now, not the anonymous scout.
Or Matt Stafford.
Or Matt Stafford. But
Right.
Byron Murphy is one of the guys as we were like catching up. I'm watching him. I'm like, I love this dude. Like he is a chaos maker and like the kind of like a beating heart of the front seven. And other people are talking, not Tepper, maybe Tepper be talking about guard Christian Haynes as a steal at pick 81. And it's never too early for me to talk about roughly 22 coaches as my coach of the year candidates, even here in early May.
Here we go.
Here's one early vote for Mike McDonald. I think I am a total believer in what he did in Baltimore. He systematically milks the very best out of his defensive roster. Plus, it will tell a good story when Geno Smith is benched for Sam Howell prior to Week 11 as the 5-5 Seahawks rip off 7 straight wins and route to a wild card berth. Welcome to Tomorrowland.
Ooh.
Okay. The last time you got behind a coach with no experience was Brandon Staley. So maybe this will be different. You never know.
Matt Rule.
I hope that that's not the route that it happens. He's intriguing. They've kind of had a quiet offseason. They kept their players. They haven't had a lot of people coming in or out, and yet I'm intrigued by them because of the coaches. Like Ryan Grubb is one of the biggest X factors in the entire NFL this year. What he did at Washington was super creative and just different, and he has a lot of talent to work with. Like Geno, there's continuity on the offensive line. I'm not sure if it's great, but the skill position continuity is fantastic. And this group has been together, and they're talented. Like him with like an electric coach could be exciting.
Yeah, I'm a Geno Smith fan, so maybe I'm back in your good graces.
Oh yeah, just give me Geno at least for the quarterback. I mean,
But Grubb is, I think, like you said, I agree with you 100%, Greg, in this topic and most things in life, probably. I I'm sweating. You know, it's an X factor here, especially with, you know, everyone, when people watching the Washington Huskies, obviously Michael Penix stood out because of what he can do with the football. But if you look past that and you look at some of the route concepts, some of the pre-snap movement, some of the alignments and the spacing that they were getting, I think that's perfect with Geno, and I think that's going to be really, really fun to watch. I am curious to see if Mike McDonald's defense is truly the Shanahan killer. I know that was sort of the energy of it in terms of why you make a hire like that and swing like that. So I'll be curious.
Got her.
By milliseconds.
Yeah.
Got kicked off the Wi-Fi.
I will say two things. Geno, the offseason worked out great for Geno, right? Sam Howell's his backup. They didn't draft anybody of note. And then, as much as we could spin, that was a pretty positive assessment of Seattle. They're, to me, clearly the third best team in the division. That's tough.
Well, tough division, but yeah.
And
But
the Niners are one of those teams.
I like teams that feel different, and I've always liked Pete Carroll. It's not a Pete Carroll thing, but it kind of is time. And Mike McDonald, like they had this pre-draft thing with him and John Schneider. It's like you forget he's 36, and he looks like really young, and it's like, wait a minute, what? These coaches are like just past
That's
puberty
ageism,
at
bro.
this point.
That's ageism.
I like it. I say go for it.
Poor Pete Carroll.
They remind me a
It's not
little
an
bit of the
anti-Pete
Cowboys,
Carroll
though, just in
situation.
that they're
Bill and Pete shipped out of town. Turned 70. Bye-bye.
like Seahawks could be very good. I think. I don't see them in the Rams like in a different tier of each other. They're both
Not a different
upper
tier,
middle.
but if I
Like-
had to put them in a pecking order,
Right.
I don't struggle.
Put it this way: if either of them were in the NFC South, then I'm putting them as negative money to win the division.
Negative money.
Including the Seahawks. I would put in that category. But the Seahawks feel a little bit like the Cowboys, where there could be a lot of stress if things don't go right this year. There's just like Tyler Lockett, DK, Geno, some of the players on the defense. Like, are they going to be with this regime long term? Is kind of open question.
All right, we just went around the NFC in around 48 minutes.
Wait,
Jourdan,
more.
let's give it up for Jourdan Rodrigue. And again, check out her incredible deep dive, journalism in sport, alive because of people like Jourdan Rodrigue finding. Let me read it again. I like that headline too. Well, what? What are you shaking your head for? Here I'm trying to get a plug in
Okay.
a big spot,
Let's go.
the biggest of all spots.
Colon.
Greg's got to go. That's why.
Oh
No,
yeah.
I'm good.
Finding Rams, 1 year behind the scenes of the NFL draft scouting process, part 1. Check that out. Check out all of Jourdan's coverage of the Rams and her NFL projects like this. And you've said it all, Jourdan. What else can I say? Good job.
I'm so happy. Thank you.
She did it, folks.
Nailed it.
She was great.
Great job.
And hope everybody enjoyed it. We'll be back next week. Until then, you know what you must do. Say it, Jourdan.
Heed the call.
Bang!